Hello, everyone. Welcome to WGSN-DB Going Solo Network. You're listening to the Business Showcase, and I am Cece Schatz, the doyen of relationship building, and I'm also the president of Going Solo Network, Inc. and Date the Right One, believe it or not. But we have got a lot going on, but before we do that, we got to do our homework. So, of course, you guys know our website is goingsolomedia.com. And if you need to email me, it's goingsolonetwork@gmail.com. You know, I love to get your messages, and it's so much fun to be able to really kind of understand more where you're at. So I love to know if you like the show, if you didn't like it, if you would like to see something different, because we like to bring on awesome guests and really embrace any situation that you might have. So please email me. Another thing I'm going to ask you to do real quick, is to like our page, subscribe to our YouTube channel, because we're live right there on YouTube and Facebook right here at the same time. And please, send any comments or any questions that you have. Send them our way, because we like to get them live right here on the platform. It's kind of fun to do that. Well, let's get on with the show, right? Because we got a lot of stuff happening here, and we do not want to waste a minute. But again, before we do that, we want to shout out to our sponsors today. Our sponsors is a wonderful company. It's called Quest Fine Jewelers. We're going to put their ticker down below. They're right there in Fairfax, Virginia. They have supported Going Solo Network and some of our shows here on the station. So we want to really reach out and say a shout out to them. Again, their phone number and information is right there. It's 877-860-0826. They're at 8431 Lee Highway in Fairfax, Virginia. Please go and see them. Let them know that you heard them right here on the Going Solo Network. We would appreciate that. So let's get on with it, because we got a lot happening. I'm going to bring our guest right up here with us. Welcome, Adam.
Cece, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
It is great to have you. Well, our wonderful guest today, he's just amazing, an amazing individual himself. And he's an inspirational speaker, an author, a business leader. Adam Markel, thank you so much for joining us today. We're going to talk about really your life, your journey, and your brand new book. So I'm excited about that. So tell us a little bit about, how did you start being a wonderful inspirational to others and reaching out and empowering them in this pivot mentality I think you've got going on here? How'd that start for you?
Well, Cece, it sort of started with a lot of pain, a lot of personal pain. It's not easy to sort of start from that place, but that's the truth of it. I was a lawyer for 18 years. I guess my claim to fame is I'm sort of a fully recovered attorney at this point. And I'm just kidding, of course. I'm not, no offense to lawyers out there, but it was a profession that wasn't suited to me. I did that work for 18 years, a long time, to be doing something that was not really my calling in life. Didn't feel like it was the work I was meant to be doing. I was very successful at it. I was a workaholic. I was tenacious, very, very persistent, and I helped a lot of my clients take care of some significant challenges in their lives. And I got paid really well to do it. But sort of midway through my career in that profession, I realized that something was off, something was wrong. And like so many people, there are signs, and there are signs kind of everywhere. I think in life, we sometimes ignore those signs. For me, I started to lose my hair. That was one of the signs. And I thought, well, I'm in a high stress job, and my grandfather didn't have a lot of hair. So, it's just heredity and that kind of thing. And so I kind of blew that off. But I was having trouble sleeping at night. I was taking Ambien for, I think, about 2 years to get to sleep, and sometimes waking up in the middle of the night. And more often than not, I was waking up in the morning feeling sort of unrested. And even when I put my feet on the floor, this was kind of the thing that really got my attention after a period of years, not weeks or months, but years. I'd put my feet on the floor and I would feel some low level anxiety, and sometimes not so low level anxiety, and even a bit of angst and dread about the day ahead. Ultimately, I told myself that if I just keep working harder, if I just work harder, if I work smarter, do the right things, I'll make enough money, and I'll eventually just be able to win my life back, buy my life back. And I think a lot of people, they do that. They convince themselves, we convince ourselves, that even when something doesn't seem right, it doesn't seem off, that we can just continue to do it and do it maybe harder, faster, smarter, whatever it is. And that's the definition of insanity, when we do the same thing over and over again, and we are somehow thinking we're going to get a different result. So for me, I thought I could find my way out of it because, I convinced myself I was pretty intelligent. I was a lawyer, for crying out loud. I should be able to figure this out. And I just couldn't. And one Saturday morning, my wife and I were on our way to our son's baseball game, and I started to feel my chest just pounding, my heart beating so fast in my chest, and I was sweating, and I started to get really, really nervous that I was having a heart attack, and ended up in the emergency room lying on a gurney with my wife standing next to me, thinking that I wasn't even going to see my kids again, and really devastated and upset, which only made all that even worse. And the doctor told my wife and I that day that I didn't have a heart attack. I was having an anxiety attack brought on by probably too much caffeine and a lot of stress and not sleeping really well and really feeling sort of just disconnected on the inside, just out of alignment. And it's like so many people that get a bit of a look at the edge. I felt like I went sort of to the precipice and looked down at the rocks and saw the scary possibilities there, that maybe I wouldn't be so lucky next time. In fact, the doctor said to me, a lot of people come into the hospital complaining of heart, or chest pains, and they don't walk out. He says, you've been really lucky to get a second chance today. And so I took that second chance and I did with it what a lot of people do. I ignored it. I went back to doing what was habitual, what I knew, and what was comfortable even. And I didn't want to rock the boat too much and all the rest of it. So I just kept doing what I was doing. And about 6 months later, I remember getting home late from work, which was pretty usual for me, customary that I would get home late, even though I would tell my wife pretty much every day that I'll be home for dinner. I'll be home for dinner. And my intention, we all sometimes have great intentions, but my intentions and what I would do were very different things. I would routinely get home late, not see the kids for dinner. And on this particular cold fall, rainy evening, I walked in the door sort of dripping wet. And I knew when I saw my wife Randy's face that I had done it again. I didn't just miss getting home for dinner, but I missed being able to even kiss the kids before they went to bed. And I can feel even in this moment, just the disappointment that I felt, the shame that I felt. And when I looked at my wife's face, I could tell that she was upset as well. And I walked straight up to her and I looked her in the eye and I said, if I keep doing what I'm doing, you're going to be a widow. And we both right then, it was kind of one of those moments you just can't believe are happening until you're right in the middle of it and it's happening. And the blessing for me to this day is that I married somebody, that I have somebody in my life, the woman that I met in college that I'll be married to 31 years this summer. I had somebody in my life that didn't look at me and remind me, hey, dummy, we've got 2 cars, 2 houses, 2 dogs, 4 kids, gerbil, goldfish, a lot of responsibilities. She didn't remind me of that because she knew I knew. She just took a deep breath, as I did, and she said, we'll figure it out. And the good news was I didn't have to have a midlife, the classic midlife crisis. We didn't have to move, pack up the kids and everything and move to Fiji, even though that would have been probably pretty fun. We instead planned for my midlife calling. And that's what ultimately happened over the course of 2.5 years, through making small changes in a number of things that we're going to talk about today. I imagine I ended up writing a book. I wrote this book here, Pivot, The Art and Science of Reinventing Your Career in Life, which enabled me to not only share the message with many thousands of people around the world, but to travel around the world, speaking to people, working with folks in businesses. I do a lot of keynote speaking, a lot of consulting with entrepreneurs and others who are reinventing, are pivoting. In other words, right now, more than ever before, that term, this book was I suppose a little bit prophetic in the use of that term pivot, because when I wrote the book, pivot was very much a word that was defining a failure, a business model, let's say, that went sideways, or something that you had to reinvent because it wasn't working. And right now, the word pivot is being used in a much less pejorative way, a much more positive connotation associated with how we're pivoting. And in fact, I think that's a really great jumping off point for us, because we have each of us now got to be serial pivoters. And we can talk about what that means and ultimately how it is that we create results by becoming more resilient in our
I totally agree with you on that. It's because so often, we feel like we have to do something even though it's not really working for us, and to be able to make a change. And to me, pivot is really evaluating your life and making a change that's best for you. And so often, like we talked right prior to the show, is that so often we come up with challenges that create this pivot for us. And we think, and if we want to think that they're a negative, it's negative. In turn, it actually is positive, because what it's doing, it's pushing you into maybe who you are to become, or who you actually are. Because so often we start careers based on when we were younger, based on money, based on maybe our family makeup or whatever our family said, oh, get into law, be a doctor, do it, all of this stuff. But your inner being, your inner soul may not been, driven for that. You may not have that actual passion. Could you do the job well? Sure. There's many jobs we can all do very well, but is it our passion? And so now that you've trained as a mentor, you lead programs around the world, you help business leaders, you help individuals that want to be into business, you help relationships, public speaking, you do really it all. And you have been able to embark on a career now that you actually have passion for. So what a pivot is that?
It's just what you said. I think people don't often realize that we are so addicted to comfort. We're addicted to security and safety. And I'm not saying I don't want to be safe, or I don't want to be comfortable. That's not what I mean. I mean that often it's those things that we crave, like comfort and security, that are actually the things that keep us playing small, that keep us showing up as less than what we're capable of being. And then we feel this sort of aching in our hearts that we could be doing more, that we ought to be doing more. We have this aching that's somehow saying, I don't know if this is my purpose in life. And we come to those moments, and often it is in those challenges that you described that we are actually growing. It's through those challenges that we grow and move to a new level in our lives. And I think that's the whole point of it. When I started writing Pivot, in fact, I remember I was writing it initially as a memoir for our kids, because I had been successful in one career, and I had, over the course of 2.5 years, using the process that is what I write about in this book, and the case studies of other people who've used similar ways of reinvention. I started wanting to have the kids just know that their dad had come to a fork in the road in my early 40s, and that I found a way to make better decisions. I found a way to make decisions that were right for me at the time. And I think you point this out, that the decisions that we make when we're 18 years old, or 25, or when we're 45, or when we're 60, or whenever it is, they're different. They're based on different things. And so I started writing this book to basically tell the kids what I was going through, a little look inside of my head, and how I had made these decisions. And our oldest daughter, Chelsea, walked in on me one day as I was scribbling away in a writer's notebook I had. And she said, "Dad, I just want you to know, I think this book is more than just a book for us." I mean, she was appreciative that I wanted to leave a legacy for the kids of something that was so intimate to me and describe what I was going through. But she said, "This book is really about so many people that are in transition now, and probably at many times in their lives." She says, "So I think you're playing too small." It's always great when your kids hold a mirror.
How old again was she?
She was probably, I want to say, 19 years old at the time, something like 18.
Very insightful. Yeah, very insightful.
Very insightful. And so she was literally doing the same thing for me. She was holding up the mirror and saying, this is comfortable for you right now to just sort of play in this little arena where you're writing a book for your kids. But what if you decided to write this book with many people in mind? and maybe even millions of people in mind. And that was one of those breathtaking moments for me, where I got to once again sort of eat the cooking, as it were. And so I think right now we are in these times of prolific change. And more than anything, I feel called to share this message, the work of Pivot, and how it is that we are able to both embrace change now, because it's a constant. It always was, it always will be, but right now it is right up in our face more than it has been at any point, I think, at least in my adult life. So knowing how it is that you adopt a pivot mentality, as you said earlier, pivot mindset is one thing, and what ultimately you can do to become more resilient is really what's on my heart these days. Because in my own experience, and having reinvented several times through several careers, and been able to create, quote, success in all of those areas, it wasn't because I didn't make mistakes. It wasn't because I didn't fail. It wasn't because everybody liked me or everybody appreciated what I was doing. It wasn't because I wasn't in my own way. I mean, quite the contrary. It's been because I've been resilient. That's what's enabled me to continually create success that is the right kind of success for me at this stage in my life. When I was in my 30s, yeah, I hadn't thought too much about going to law school. It was just what you said. I had seen it as something I could do to earn a lot of money and take care of my family. And having come from almost nothing financially, growing up in a tiny little apartment in Queens, New York, I wanted that. I wanted my kids to have a house. I wanted them to have a pool. I wanted them to have a lifestyle that we didn't have. And so legal profession was great for that. It provided for that. And I was willing to trade at the time my time and other things, including what was deep inside my heart, for this security and this safety. I would not make that same trade today. It was fine then. And what I learned through that process enables me to be here now. I think right now, more than anything, we've got to learn the skills of resilience, because with those skills, in any time we can succeed. In any time we can do the things that ultimately bring us joy and fulfillment and money as well. Lots of ways to define success, but you can't experience it if at some point you're just not around. You just, and that goes not just for individuals, but organizations. Like one of the things that's most important to me these days is not just how it is that we are individually more resilient, but on an organizational level, which has so many, such a massive influence in the world, our organizations and associations, and how we are developing resilient organizations by caring about people within those organizations. To me, that is, that's kind of an epic place to be having an impact. And that excites me. It excites our team.
Yeah, that's very exciting, because, I think with today's world, with all that we're going through, it really hits it on the head, because we're seeing everyone scramble around, trying to do things in a different way that they hadn't done before, really embracing many, many changes that are happening in their lives. And many of them are doing it very well. Some of them are struggling. We can see that, some of them are struggling with it. But then others are really embracing the change and saying, you know what, this may be the new norm and we are going to have to embrace it. And what can we do from it? I know from my own perspective, what I have found is being creative with change. When change happens, versus looking at something that's taking place that is in a negative form, I look at it as a being creative. What can I do differently? How can I embrace this? How can I shake it up a bit, right? And I think that is being very resilient, don't you think?
I absolutely do. I think there's three things that we find the most telling of resilient people as well as resilient companies. And this is through lots of research that we've done. We actually have a resilient leader assessment tool that we can share with your audience as well. It's a way for people to know a little bit more about what resilience means, because we could spend hours and hours just talking about that one topic. And I'll say a couple of things about it, and then I'll give you these three traits to both look for in others. So if you're leading teams, you want to look for these things in other people, and you yourself can begin to model those things even more and ultimately develop greater resilience for yourself. So embedded in what I just said is the fact that resilience is something that you can learn. Resilience is something that can be taught, and it can be adopted, meaning we can train it and people can learn it and begin to use it and create greater resilience for themselves, whether they're 50 years old or they're 15 years old, doesn't matter. Of course, resilience is baked into our DNA. Let's just start there. We're all resilient individuals because that's why our species is even here. We've been resilient for thousands of years and have been able to adapt to situations and conditions, et cetera. So what we found through the research is that there are three traits of resilient people. So the first one is, and feel free at any point to just stop me right after one of these and we can answer a couple questions or dig a little deeper. But the first one I'll just share is we've got to have the ability to reframe situations. So meaning somebody who is resilient is someone who naturally looks at challenges, the way you were talking about, CC, looks at challenges and finds the meaning in them, finds the meaning. My grandmother used to talk about how we have to mine for meaning in things. We have to dig for the meaning in things because often the situations that are around us don't make sense. It's the whole idea of everything happens for a reason. Well, I don't buy that. That's BS for me, but that statement can be changed a little bit, and then I do buy in. So everything happens for a reason, and that reason is there to serve. And that's the curiosity that I have around the challenges that are happening now in our world, the challenges with whether it's the COVID-19 crisis or any other thing that we're experiencing. I want to get to a place where I'm curious. And the way for me to get into a curious place is to ask different questions about what I'm experiencing, what I'm seeing. And so I go back to my grandmother's advice and her counsel, and I wish she were still around. I miss her every day, but she would say, where's the meaning? How can we dig for the meaning? And that's something that Viktor Frankl, when he was writing his book, Man's Search for Meaning, and talking about when he was an Auschwitz Holocaust survivor, a concentration camp survivor, that he was thinking, even in the midst of that brutal situation that he was immersed in, he was thinking, someday I'm going to be able to share the meaning behind all this with other people. I mean, can you imagine being in that situation and be thinking that 5 years or 10 years or 20 years from now, people's lives will be made better because of the meaning that you were able to find out of something so horrific as that. And then he wrote a book and he did exactly that. He changed people's lives by the thousands, maybe by the millions at this point, probably by the millions, because he was searching for meaning. So the first thing that people who are resilient do is they reframe what they're seeing, what they're experiencing, to find the meaning in those things. And one great question, I'll pause right here to say this. My wife, Randy, asked me this question, and it's the perfect question when it comes to reframing. And the question is, what is the creative opportunity? You can think about everything that's happening in our world right now. If you could just ask that question consistently, what is the creative opportunity that is presented by what is going on and what I'm experiencing? It puts you in a place where you're no longer judging it as right or wrong or good or bad. The energy, the charge of that energy is sort of dissipated in the moment. You're like in neutral, so that you can examine, where are the opportunities for my own growth, for the growth of other people, for the growth of our world, our countries. It's significant, but you don't get there unless you reframe your mindset at the beginning. And that's the first trait of resilient individuals as well as organizations.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. What we're going to do is take a quick break, and when we come back, I want to talk about the other 2 points, because I think this is so important for those that are looking at their lives right now, because I think what we're going through is a wonderful, I hate to say it, as a wonderful period to really evaluate yourself, evaluate your life, evaluate your work, your family, what's important to you, and we can take that as a growing period, that we can embrace. So I totally get what you're saying, and I love it. I think it's very well said, and something we definitely need to hear. So I thank you so much for Adam for being on this show here with us. So we're just going to take a quick moment of silence so that we can have our station break for the audio part that's on the radio. So if you guys will just bear with us. You guys are listening to WGSN-DB Going Solo Network, and we'll just take a moment of silence here. Okay, thank you guys for staying with us. This is WGSN-DB Going Solo Network. You're listening to the Business Showcase. I'm Cece Schatz, the doyen of relationships. And we have with us today Adam Markel. He has written this wonderful new book. Let's put a little bit of information up there so you can see it. He empowers, he inspires people, power of resilience, and he's an inspirational speaker, author, business leader. He's a trained mentor. I mean, I can go on and on and on about how wonderful you are, because you are, and you help people all over worldwide. But what we're talking about today is resilience, and we're talking about your new book that you have out, which is The Art of Science of Reinventing Your Career and Life, really inspiring people through this moment that they're going through to really embrace their pivots, right? Embrace their change, embrace what they want in their life. So you talked about the first half of the show. You talked about your journey, how you got to where you are today, being a very successful attorney, then pivoting your life, right? Realizing that you wanted something different for yourself, and then moving towards now being an author, helping other people, inspiring them, inspiring business people, individuals and businesses themselves. And so tell us a little bit more about, we talked about the first point, and now we're going to go into the second point of resilience. So tell us a little bit more about that.
Beautiful. Yeah, so part one, again, is to reframe, take a look at a situation, reframe, find the meaning, ask that question, what's the creative opportunity? Part two is about recalibrating. It's about looking at where you are and knowing that to get to where you want to be, you may need to make some changes. And I'm not a big believer in the sort of the jump ship methodology. In fact, we have a house in this beautiful little island off of Cape Cod, and a couple of years ago they were building a drawbridge, and we were driving over this bridge. I stopped to ask, what they were up to. And they said, well, we're building a new bridge right here next to this bridge, because this bridge may not last through another winter, another nor'easter or something like that. So, it took a couple of years, but they built this new bridge next to the old bridge, and then they tore down the old bridge. And I thought, well, that's a great metaphor for pivoting, what it looks like, or at least how we teach pivoting, is that we didn't tear down the first bridge and strand everybody on the other sides, but built the second bridge, and then we're able to remove the first bridge. And I thought, well, that's such a great example of it, but it got a little bit better just for a moment more. I'll tell you this, we're driving on that same bridge maybe a year later, and we see them constructing something again. It's the Army Corps of Engineers. We pull over, we ask, what the heck, what are you doing now? It's millions of dollars, and years later, and they go, well, that bridge that we built was the replacement bridge, but it wasn't the permanent bridge. And I thought, oh my goodness, like the pivot, this whole metaphor just keeps getting richer, because just like with my career and with so many other people's careers as well that we've worked with, and your business, certainly, you don't just pivot once. It's not a one and done thing. It's what you said earlier, CC. We have to learn the art and the science of pivoting on a serial basis. And many of those pivots are actually gradual pivots. They're small micro pivots. And it's science, it's physics, that you cannot change the input in any system without also simultaneously changing the output. It's also called the law of small differences, or the butterfly effect. But when we make small changes, ultimately everything in the system will be impacted by that. In fact, looking at the COVID-19 charts that we've been seeing for months now, it's the exact chart of what we're talking about, because it's sort of a slow line, gradual line, and then it hockey sticks up. And that's the compounding effect. It's the compounding effect with interest on your money, and why Einstein called the compounding effect a miracle. It's the compounding effect with something like a pandemic. And it's the compounding effect of small changes in what you do. So the second step of, or trait that resilient people and resilient organizations do, is they recalibrate. They make small changes. And often I like to refer to it as recalculating, even, because just like if you're driving in your car and you make a mistake on the road, you know, your GPS is telling you this is the way to go, and you make a left when you're supposed to make a right. The GPS doesn't stop you right where you are and go, "You idiot. You never listen to directions. It's just like your father said." It never does that. It doesn't yell at you. It doesn't berate you. It doesn't judge you. It simply says one word. CC, what's the word that the GPS says over and over again when you make a mistake?
It doesn't say recalculating.
Yes, it says recalculating. And that's what it does. It recalculates a way to get from where you are to where you want to be. And so the second, and this is such an important trait of resilient people and resilient organizations, is they don't go into judgment about the fact that they've made mistakes. They simply recalibrate, recalculate, and then move forward. That's it. That's step two. Anything that you want to touch on there before I move on to this third trait? That
No, you know, I think it's very point taken and very spot on, because it is so true. It's that you can't just throw up your hands and give up, right? You have to stay with the game. You know, you got to stay with it. And as you, with the step one, reframing, you have to really think about what you're doing, and maybe you do need to make small changes as you're adapting to something. You know, nothing great happens overnight, right? So you have to learn and adapt to it and grow from it. So yeah, you're absolutely right.
So let's talk about the third trait of resilient people, resilient organizations, and that is, let's go back to the definition of resilience for a second. So resilience for many people is this ability. Like if I ask 10 people, define resilience, 9 of 10 at least would say it's the ability to get back up when you've been knocked down. It's sort of what I like to refer to as the Rocky Balboa model, right? Where in 1976 is the first time I saw that movie. I was 11 years old. I'm dating myself literally. My dad, we got out of the movie theater and I'm just like running to the car, you know, my arms up in the air. I'm singing the song. He has to like corral me and bring me back to the car. I was so excited. And if you've seen that movie, you know Rocky gets knocked down so many times. He probably gets knocked down more than a dozen times in that movie. And he keeps getting back up and getting back up. And I think that's the way people define resilience, is this ability to just take a punch and get back up. But here's the thing, you know, Rocky wins our hearts in that movie, but he loses the fight. Mm-hmm. And he doesn't just lose the fight. He don't look too good. You know, in the end, he's really bruised and banged up from the process. And so our research is clear that resilience is not about endurance. It's not about Rocky. It's not about being Rocky. It's not purely physical. Resilience is actually about how we recover. Resilience is about how we regenerate our energy and our capacity to be able to not just come back, but to come back stronger, to come back wiser, to come back more able to actually do things that work now in the moment, to be able to create momentum. That's what it looks like when you're resilient, not just that you survive, but you take what you've learned as a way to thrive. And so that involves developing new rituals for regeneration, new rituals for recovery. And again, we're not just talking about how it is that we recover ourselves physically, but we must realize that resilience is holistic. It's mental, it's emotional, it's even spiritual. So when we think about mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual, those 4 areas that we will work with individuals on, how do they increase their resilience in those different quadrants. And we use this resilience tool that I mentioned earlier. We've got this assessment tool to figure out where are you lacking, or where is something not optimal and optimized in one of those 4 areas. Because if you're not optimized for your mental resilience, then you're finding that you're like me, you became exhausted in the middle of the afternoon. I needed to have another cup of coffee. I needed to have something sugary to get through the day. I was agitated. I got angry very easily. And I was a litigator. So for me, it was actually sort of an advantage, I suppose, in my work, because I could really use that stuff. But for the most part, it didn't really work for my personality. It didn't work for my body, and it didn't work for my relationships. And so long story short is that we've got to look after ourselves in those 4 areas, and we've got to create new rituals. By that I mean conscious habits. Like we have a podcast that's all about the conscious pivot, and that's all about what do we do consciously on a ritual basis to make changes in our lives, versus when I think of habit, I think of the way I brush my teeth. I don't even think about it. I brush my teeth with my right hand or my left hand because it's my habit to do it. And I drive home in the same route because I don't think about it. I just do it habitually. And that's for me where the problems begin is when we don't have a level of consciousness about where we are and what we're doing. And to be more present gives us more options, more creative options when we're present. So this third trait of resilient individuals and resilient organizations is that we are adopting rituals for our recovery, for our self-care, and for the care of those around us. Because in many ways, this is a cultural thing, meaning on a company level or within some group, even entrepreneurial groups, often what the culture represents is a culture of exhaustion. It's a culture that's being modeled by the leaders in that whatever that group is within that team. So if you've got a leader that takes themselves for granted, that doesn't believe that they need to adopt self-care rituals because they can just go the distance, they can continue to run themselves on empty and not run out of gas, is the wrong example for creating greater capacity, greater productivity, greater performance for the long haul, for longevity. I mean, there's a Harvard Business Review article that compares the highest performing athletes in the world, meaning Olympic medalists and professional athletes, to business executives. And there's no question that the level of performance at the highest levels among those athletes and those executives, they had one thing in common. And that thing that they had in common was that they had rituals for their own recovery. So it is a myth that we should get the Night Owl Award, or we should develop cultures within our organizations that are perpetuating a model of exhaustion. Instead, what we need are cultures that are producing resilience within those organizations, cultures that are more defined as a got your back culture than a watch your back culture. And those kind of small and not so small shifts in the fabric, in the culture of those companies is something that, again, our team, we love to work at those levels with people, with the leaders themselves and with those companies, because the impact of those organizations on the world is so big. And again, I don't think there's anything unusual about this, that we've all been sort of raised to think that we've got to, be able to work harder, that we should feel sort of shy about asking for time off or asking for time for ourselves, that in many ways that's a sign of weakness when we do that, that it's telling somebody that maybe we're not a team player. There's a lot of issues around permission. There's a lot of issues around shame when it comes to how it is that we actually take better care of ourselves. And I don't mean care in the self-indulgent way. I mean, if you were going to run a marathon tomorrow, if you were going to have an Olympic performance tomorrow, if someone's life was on the line tomorrow at your job, would you get a better night's sleep? Would you take care of your body better? Would you drink? Would you hydrate yourself? Would you make sure that you were mentally prepared for the tasks of that day? And the answer is always yes. Mm-hmm. You would treat yourself in a very different way than if you were just going to show up at work and, you know what? I'm going to put my work in, I'm going to put my time in, I'm going to get paid, or, I'm going to do what I got to do. And maybe it would even mean that you would look differently at the habits that, let's say, have you sort of exhausting yourself mentally, which is a lot of the time today, because you would realize that if I'm not at my best mentally, then maybe I'm not doing everything I can for my business, or I'm not doing everything I can for my employer. And it's a small but a really important mindset shift. So again, that first trait of resilient people, they are able to reframe and find those creative opportunities. Step 2 or trait number 2 is that they are able to recalibrate and recalculate their position. And the third thing that these resilient individuals always model is this innate ability to recharge their battery, to recover and regenerate their energy so that they continue to keep their capacity level really high, and they're also able to go the distance. And to me, those are three powerful things combined.
Very well said. Very well said. You know, as you're talking, and I just let you talk because I really felt that you were just really saying what we need to hear today. And, you know, but taking this not only just through business, but taking it to a personal level. Now, I handle a lot of relationship loss, and those coming from that, you know, that segment are really pretty beat up, bruised, and trying to find their lives again, trying to figure out their whole being. And when I'm listening to you, I'm thinking this isn't just can apply for business. This can be applied for your life, you know, as you're moving forward in life, because so often marriages are not there simply because the people are working so crazy, and like you were doing, you know, at the first part of your life, you know, you were just putting the gas to the metal and you weren't coming home, you weren't connecting with your family. And a lot of these individuals, because of that, are now finding themselves, you know, pivoting into a single life. And so now they're trying to grasp on, now what do I do? How do I handle all of this? So I really think the steps that you have explained here today can not only benefit you in business, but can benefit your personal life if you use them, you think about them, you apply them. I think it's very, very important, because resilience is it happens. It's something that we need to really understand and be able to embrace, not only in business, but in our personal life. And in our personal life, it will reflect upon our business. And so it's, I think it's glorious what you've done. So your book, again, it's called The Pivot, the Art and Science of Reinventing Your Career. It's right here, so you can see what it looks like. Now, on your website, you had mentioned that here's your website, the Adam Markel, it's markel.com. Is that test on your website that you were referring to?
It is. You can find it on the website, and the URL, if folks want to just go directly to it. It takes 3 minutes. And by the way, we're not selling anything, so it's just something we feel is really important. People find out not only where they are on the scale of their own resilience in those 4 areas, but also what to do to make some changes. Small, again, nothing drastic here, but the small changes over time are really powerful. So you can go to your.resilienceculture.com. resilienceculture.com, and you can get this assessment. It takes about 3 minutes to fill it out, and then you get your results, as well as a very significant research paper with suggestions specifically tailored to the results that you got on your assessment. So hopefully a lot of people will take advantage of that, just to take a sort of a moment, take stock in where you are. I agree with you so much, CC. People could benefit so much from just learning what resilience is right now, and what it's not, and how it is that they can more consciously create that for themselves. Their relationships will be better. Their own personal, their own sense of well-being, first and foremost, will be so much more improved. And right now, people in times like this, we've got to feel grounded. We've got to feel as though, we are in fact safe and secure, and we're our best solution to that. It's my humble opinion, it's not the government, it's not our employer, it's not the economy, the markets. That's not where our well-being comes from. It comes from within, and we can create that ourselves. Absolutely right. You're spot on with that. And I think this book is really, really going to change the lives of many. Absolutely. For they start to understand and put those little elements in play, because that's the key, is not thinking, okay, I've got to make this huge change. It's putting these various steps in play that will benefit their lives, and that creates that pivot that happens. So it's just like a momentum as it keeps going. So it's wonderful. It's brilliant. And I think definitely positive and inspirational. So thank you so much. It's been a joy to have you on the show. Oh, my joy, my pleasure. Thank you so much, DC. Thanks for having me.
is the link that you were referring to, is that on your other site, your adammarkel.com site?
Yes, you can get that there. You have to scroll down just past the, just below the fold on the first page to get it. But there's a question that asks if you're as resilient as you need to be. And that's, if you find out, you click the find out button, you can get it right there as well.
Okay. Well, we'll make sure everyone gets that information, and we'll put it up on the site so they have it, because I think it's important to be able to get to that. And also your site. You want to check out your site and see what you're up to and what's going on with you. And we'll definitely keep that on our list of sites to be watching. So
we are always looking for, right now our opportunity is in virtual training. That's what we've been doing for years. Again, been teaching the pivot principles as well as principles around creating more resilient organizations. So people that are looking to have those kind of trainings for their teams or their companies, that's a great fit. You can go to our website and leave us a note there, and we can get in touch. And we're always looking for that opportunity as well.
Yeah, I think that's great.
Oh, one last thing, just if people love TED Talks, I mean, I know it's kind of it's the TED Talk I gave about 1.5 years ago was really got a lot of really wonderful feedback on it. So if people dig TED Talks and they want to find out just a little bit more about my sort of the ugly side of my pivot story, they can go to watch that TED Talk on YouTube as well.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. It's really important for us to realize that we can change our lives and that we have control of it. So often we think that all the elements around us is they've got us, it's controlling us. And really it isn't. It's us allowing change to happen, the pivoting to happen. So I think it's marvelous what you're doing. I really want to tell everybody again, I'll put it up here, his book, it's Pivot, The Art and Science of Reinventing Your Career and Life. Please go out and get it. If you want to make a change, let's start with reading the book. I think that would certainly help. So thank you, Adam Markel. We appreciate you coming on today. You're a joy. As always, we hope that you'll join us again sometime in the future. We appreciate all that you do. So everyone, we got to go. This show goes by very quickly. Thank you, Adam. I appreciate it. You guys are listening to WGSN-DB Going Solo Network. This is the Business Showcase. We hope you enjoyed it as much as I did, and I got a lot from it. I hope that you guys did too. We love it. I love that pivoting. Just think about it. Just a little bit of change, a little bit of action that you take within your life, and it really creates something great and wonderful for you, both personal and for business. And that's what it's all about, isn't it? Really creating the joy and the center, and making sure that you're doing what you want to do in life. And that's what we're here on earth for, is making that change, embracing other people and embracing what we do and loving life. And so that's what we want to do. You want to love the life you're in, right, and embrace it. So I would suggest, again, his book. It's a wonderful book out there. It's called Pivot, The Art and Science of Reinventing Your Career and Life. We'll hope you'll join us right back here again on WGSN-DB Business Showcase. I am Cece Schatz, and you're listening to the GoingSoloMedia.com. We'll catch you back next time. Bye for now.